Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Counterculture presented by Counterman. My name is Jeff White. I'm the managing editor of Counterman magazine. And today we are talking all about motor oil, in particular, the new standards that just took effect earlier this week. Now, when it comes to motor oil, there are few people who know the subject as well as my guest today. I'd like to welcome in Nguyen, the technical scientist and automotive lubrication specialist from Pennzoil. Sean, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Jeff, for the invite again. It's good to speak to you again. Looking forward to talk to you and your audience.
Good talking to you, sir. Let's start right away with the big news this week. The launch of the the next North American GF7 engine oil specification, Big news. So what does it mean for the counter professional? What does it mean for the customer?
Quick answer, Jeff. It means a better oil. It means a better performance oil who give you better cleanliness protections on these engines, better durability for extended drain interval requirements from the OEMs, better even better durability protection for the consumers in extending the engine life, as well as giving you some fuel efficiency performance at the same time for those when the gasoline prices are a little bit high. So giving you a couple more percentage in those requirements. And so in a roundabout way, it is better. But the nice thing is it's also backwards compatible. So it's good for anything for the last 15 years, as well everything new that's coming off the assembly line as we speak today.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So it is compatible for, you said backwards compatible. Talk a little more about that.
Well, with GF7, of course, the previous category, which is out in the market right now, which is a GF6, it will go all the way back to the GF5, 4s, and so forth. And that correlates very quickly to the APIs, which a lot of consumers are aware of. The API, and this will also roll out the new API SQ. That would then cover all the APIs before that, I think, all the way to possibly SL. Before that, all that would be discontinued, but basically SL, you're looking at these, the 80s and so forth. So all those vehicles, which is still on the market, except for our classic vehicles, which we all dearly love, would be covered by this.
Now, Sean, does this mean that we're going to see strictly this GF7 product on the shelves? Will we still see some GF6 the next time we go out?
I think so. You will still have that. You might even still have the old SN SL product out there on the shelf, depending on the motors and the engines that are available in the market. But I think that will disappear slowly as a new GF is introduced or a new category is introduced. The last one that was there in that category will be replaced or will be discontinued to cover that range of years in a sense, right? And typically it's about 5 or 6 GF, I guess you call it GF categories or API categories that will be included in that range that will be available on the shelf for the consumer.
All right, GF7, big news in the industry. Let's switch gears a little here. The last time you and I talked, we were discussing which motor oil is best for winter. I realize in some parts of the country it's not as bad as it is up here in Ohio. But now we're getting into the spring, at least we hope. Should the Counter Pro suggest a different type of oil for the warmer conditions?
Absolutely not. I think you should stick with what you've recommended because the current oils that are out there, the premium oils like our Pennzoil Platinum product line, is all year round, right? We talked about last time on the ability for a lot of the synthetics, the premium synthetics, to be able to handle the extreme cold, to flow at extreme cold temperatures. At the same time, the premium synthetics like our Pennzoil products, give you the ability to handle the summer heat, the stop and go driving, the soccer mom driving of multiple stops and multiple trips in those areas where you need the engine to perform. So that's the advantage of having a synthetic product is that it gives you the extreme edges of both the hot as well as the cold to allow you to perform all year round. I wouldn't change a thing. other than making sure you change your oil regularly and keeping the oil level topped off um, regularly so that you maintain good oil levels within the car.
Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcox Media.
You just mentioned changing your oil regularly. Now, I know back in the day that was, what, 3,000 miles was the standard. What are we looking at now?
Oh my goodness, it's a hodgepodge of stuff right now, right? Vehicles, manufacturers, certain manufacturers, they've shifted, and that is part of EPA regulations. That's part of performance of oils have changed over the years on the performance of additive technology as well as base oil technologies. OEMs are shifted to five. I don't see many 5,000s anymore. You start to see 7,500 miles interval all the way up to a year. And so that varies depending on manufacturer, depending on oil capacities of those engines, depending on an engine type and engine designs. So for the consumer, it is critical that they keep an eye on their read their owner's manuals as well as the counter staff to be aware of the various of the different manufacturers and even this within this same manufacturer for Ford or Stellantis now. There are high performance engines versus the four cylinders engines, and they will have differences in oil change intervals. And it's critical that they pay attention to that if they want to keep their cars longer.
Well, I'm glad you brought up all the variants and the categories because that leads beautifully into this next question. At a parts store, any business that supplies engine oil, there seems to be an endless selection of brands and or viscosities. So how does the counter professional make that all make sense to the customer? That is a very broad question, Sean. Good luck.
Well, I'll hit on a couple points. One is you educate the consumer, right? So that the consumer, hopefully, when I go to the counter, I know what weights I want. And I don't expect that from all consumers, but it is incumbent for the consumers to know what oil weights they need. But the counter staff has some defense on that, right? We have technology like you remember the old Chilton manuals that we used to go to the counter staff and
Absolutely.
read up and open up on your make and model. We can get an oil type, and the counter staff technology has that capability now. They can go to either the manufacturer, like Pennzoil, we will give you the year, make, and model. We'll give you the oil type and the oil weight, or they can use some of the I guess software that's available for the store chains, right? Motor, all data. Some of those are very quick to be able to give you the oil weight for the specifics for those engines and asking the right question because even though you may have one engine size, it may have a turbo, it may not have a turbo. So be aware of those kind of questions so that you get the right oil type for the consumer. But once you find that out, it's then incumbent on the counter to educate the consumer why this is good. For example, if a vehicle calls for a 5W30, the 30 number is critical in maintaining that oil film thickness to protect that hardware. The first number is our winter weight, which we talked about in our last call, in our last conversation. But the second number is always critical. So if a vehicle calls for a 5W20 versus a 5W30, you got to understand that the clearances in those two different engines are different. And so making sure that you either have a 20 or a 30 is one of the key areas in giving your engine life, extending the life of that engine over time. And when you go thin, sometimes you get too thin of an oil film, then you have surface to surface interactions. We call that boundary film, metal to metal contact that cause wear. And once you got to catch a wear, it's hardly any way to replace that other than rehoning the engine or repairing that piece of hardware. Thus, critically maintain that second viscosity number is where either the consumer or the counter staff. When I go to the store, it could be O'Reilly's or Walmart's, right? I look at the second number first. I find my brand that I like, of course, and I'm biased, right? It's Pennzoil, so I go for the Pennzoil yellow bottles or the silver bottle. I look for the either the 20 weights or the 30 weights, and then I figure out from there the grade or the performance category that I want in my oil.
Sean, thank you so much. Lots of good information and insight you shared with us, and we'd like to thank Sean Nguyen from Pennzoil for joining us today. It's always good to hear from you, sir.
Absolutely. Great to hear from you too, and looking forward to our future talks.
All right, and thank you. And that's all for the latest installment of Counterculture. For more Counterman videos, just go to the Counterman YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.